You are listening to the 5 a.m. podcast, and today is your day. Welcome to the 5 a.m. podcast, where we bring you insightful conversations with thought leaders and influencers who are making headway and some waves in their callings and industries. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with a pioneer in both business success and personal development. Dennis J. Henson has been transforming lives and businesses for over 5 decades as an entrepreneur, educator, best-selling author, and international speaker. After founding Vanguard Marketing and Investments in 2003, he led the Arlington Real Estate Investing Association for 13 years and authored game-changing books like The Royal Flush of Real Estate Investing and A Millionaire's Treasure Map to Real Estate Investing. But what truly sets Dennis apart is his remarkable ability to distill complex principles into actionable wisdom. Now, his latest work, Real Impact, Daily Inspiration, presents the culmination of a lifetime spent collecting and applying transformative ideas. As Dennis often shares from his mentor, Tom Hendricks, you can no more fail than water can run uphill when you apply the right principles consistently. Today, Dennis will reveal how daily reading can become that superpower that unleashes all other potential, a force he considers to be as powerful as gravity or magnetism in shaping destinies. Whether you're battling self-doubt, stalled momentum, or imposter syndrome, Dennis's insights promise to plant seeds that will yield a multiplied harvest in your life. Now, as always, before we start that intro, I'm going to ask that you please share this with your friends and networks. I know many are going to appreciate today's conversation. And as I can see from our analytics, we have viewers from across the earth, not just here on the North American continent. So wherever you are, thank you for being here. Come on in, have a seat, and listen in. I know many are going to enjoy this conversation. And thank you also to those who've given us a 5-star review on their favorite podcast player. We do appreciate that. And of course, those that have gone over to buy me a coffee, thank you for those virtual cups of coffee this week and last. We do appreciate all the support. And now, let's roll that intro. Dennis Henson, welcome to the 5 a.m. podcast.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you having me today.
I'd love to hear about your journey. You've had success across multiple domains, from education to real estate and personal development. Is there a connected thread that runs through these seemingly different career paths?
Sure there is. I was a band director in the early 70s, and my goal was to become a college band director. So I completed my master's degree at Mississippi State, and we had a successful band. I was at Clark Central High School in Athens. We marched in the Rose Bowl parade and made superior ratings. So when I was contacted by Georgia Tech and offered the job as their band director, I thought, that's great. So I was planning to do that. I moved to Atlanta, and the contract was prepared. I was to be signing it the following day when I got a call from a company in Tennessee, and they said, we want you to come up and interview for a position. And I said, well, I'm not looking for a position. I have, my goal is to become a college band director. I'm going to be signing the contract tomorrow. And they said, well, don't sign the contract. Come up here and let's talk. We'll pick you up in the limousine. We'll buy you a steak. We'll give you a $25 cigar and give you a round trip ticket. Well, I didn't smoke, and I could have got a steak in Atlanta. In 1975, round trip ticket on an airline was big, and you were just a young guy, and I thought, I can go up there and tell them no and eat their steak.
Yeah.
So I went up to I went to Memphis, and they picked me up in a limousine, took me to Selmer, Tennessee, and interviewed me, bought me a steak, did everything they said they would, but I still wasn't sold. Then we talked money. They offered me 20 times the salary that Georgia Tech was offering. Well, I was young and had never had any money, and I could see by the people that were there, the clothes they were wearing, the cars they were driving, the jewelry they had on, they were serious. I mean, it was big money. So I took it. I signed on. Well, the first thing they did was give me 3 books: Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill; Success, The Glenn Bland Method; and The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. Michael, when I read those books, I'd never read a self-help book. I didn't know what self-help was. I didn't have any idea what was about to happen. But when I finished reading those books, I was a different person. I mean, they really had me motivated. I was on fire. So it's kind of like a drug. I thought, I've got to have more of this. You know, I want more books like this. Well,
Yeah.
in 75, there was no internet. There was no Google or YouTube. If you
Yes.
wanted to find out something, you literally had to pick up the phone. It wasn't a cell phone. It was a phone on the wall or on the desk and go and see somebody and say, what are you reading? And finding successful people to share what they read. I read a lot of books, and some of them were good. Some of them were not so good. Some of them really shook me to the core. It's great. So I decided, I met Jim Rohn early on. He came to one of their meetings. This was before anybody knew Jim Rohn. I mean, he was, just a name back then. But he said, write everything down. You don't ever know when you might need it. Use a journal. So I started writing all those success books. I want to go back and read them,
Yes.
check on them again. I also signed up for a company that provided success motivational tapes, Earl Nightingale and all the big guys. So when I would hear a poem or a quote or anything motivational story, I'd put that in my journal too. So for 50 years, I had a pretty good collection. And then when computers came, I transferred all of that stuff into the computer. So I didn't have to keep an actual written journal anymore. So I moved to Texas 35 years ago and was investing in real estate here. And I was just doing really well because there's so much property in Texas. Everything was wonderful. Well, I wanted to go to real estate investing groups so that I could get better, but there were no groups in Arlington. There were groups in Dallas and groups in Fort Worth, but to drive to those was about an hour and a half, 3 hours, going there and coming back. So I thought, I'll start a group in Arlington and then I'll bring in the speakers I want to hear.
Yes.
And so I did, and it was very successful. The AREA was a very big group, and we drew people from both Dallas and Fort Worth and Arlington, Grand Prairie, and all of the metroplex came to our meetings. So I thought, well, if I really want to get good, I'll start teaching classes on advanced techniques. So I taught advanced classes on short sales subject to private money, land trust. One day a student came up, one of the members came up and said, I want you to mentor me and I'll pay you. And I said, well, Mike, I don't really have time to mentor you. I have my real estate business and I'm running these groups and I'm not really interested. And he says, well, you didn't understand. I'm going to retire in about 3 weeks and you're going to mentor me. I thought, okay. So he said, let's go out to lunch and we'll talk about it. So we went out to Whataburger. He bought me a hamburger. And after we ate, he reached into his pocket, pulled in a checkbook and handed it to me and said, here, write down the amount. And I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, well, this will solve this. It'll get rid of him because I'm going to put an amount down here I know he won't pay. So I wrote a large amount and I gave it back to him. He tore the check out and signed it, handed it back to me, and didn't even look at the amount. So I started teaching. That's when I started mentoring students. And I thought, if they're going to pay me this much, I better be pretty good. So my students were super successful. They were so successful that people started inviting me to come and speak at their events. I spoke at expos, at other real estate groups in Mexico. I mean, had a lot of speaking engagements. Podcasts were just starting up. And there was a real estate podcast, I think, in Houston, and I went on that, and the moderator asked me, he said, Dennis, why are your students so successful? And I said, well, I haven't formed the habit, haven't formed success habits. If they can form success habits, they become very successful. And he said, well, what's the number one success habit? And I said, have them form the habit of reading something positive every day that moves them toward their ultimate goal. So after the podcast, I thought, that's really was a good answer. Wouldn't it be great if there were some tool to help people form that habit? And then I thought, wait a minute, I've been collecting books and poems and short stories and quotes for 50 years. I can put those in a book and people can form the habit regardless of their time. If they have 3 or 4 seconds, they can read a quote. If they have 5 minutes, they can read a poem. If they have 30 minutes, they can read a short story. And if they have 3 hours, they can read one of the books. So this was in 2018. And I said, I can do this in a couple of months. I'll have this put together. Well, in 2024, the book got published. It took 6 years.
But good things take time.
Yeah, and the reviews that I'm getting on Amazon, it's just breathtaking because it's changing people's lives. So
Yes.
that was a long answer to a short
No, that's
question, but
good. It's great to hear that. Faith comes by hearing. So we've got to hear, and people need to realize that it is possible. And, people can go through their life, there's pitfalls, there's distractions. They want to stay on this. They would like a straight, narrow road, not something that winds all over the place. And it sounds like, you've helped people navigate through some of these things as you were listening before you started talking about the podcaster in Texas asking you that question. I was thinking it sounds like some people had some really good dry wood and they asked you to come along and start a fire. Would do you kind of see it that way? Like there must have been some things that they were already bringing to the table.
Michael, I think of it like this. People are put here on earth with a purpose.
Yes.
They don't necessarily know what the purpose is. And sometimes things happen in their life to change the direction of their life. They're moving in one direction and all of a sudden something happens and it just totally changes it. But that's part of the bigger plan, I believe. I think that the plan was that I would end up becoming an author, but I'd never thought about writing.
Right.
I've written a lot of training materials, and those are going into my real estate books. I'm doing a series of real estate books. Those all came from the training. Kind of like I was led into this. I didn't really have a choice. I was just following the lead of something much, much bigger and with a greater purpose
Yes.
than I could figure out myself.
Yeah. Well, in your book, Real Impact Daily Inspiration, you feature that genie's lamp on the cover. And
Yes.
of course, we can all think back to the fables of the genie lamps and giving them a little rub and seeing what comes out. So, what symbol does this represent, and does it relate to your philosophy about reading?
It does. You mentioned the story of Aladdin. A young
Yeah.
man found an old lamp and he was cleaning it and he realized that it had magic powers.
Yeah.
That he rub it and then a genie would come. And what would the genie say? What did the genie require of him? Do you
I don't
remember?
know. I don't
Well,
remember.
the genie said, "You've got to tell me what you want." If
That's
Aladdin
powerful.
didn't tell him anything, he didn't get anything. It wasn't magic. First, he had to say, "Okay, genie, I want this." That's how life works. People read the story and they think it has nothing to do with life, but it
Yeah.
really does, because if you know what you want and you have a burning desire and you focus on that, it's like starting a fire. You know, if you can maintain your focus. Well, that's why the genie lamp is on the book, because if you read something positive every day that leads you toward your goal, you first must have a goal. And then when you read every day, the book reminds you, this is the goal I'm moving toward. So it's like putting a rudder on a boat. If a boat's out in the middle of the water, it doesn't have a rudder, where's it going to go? Well, wherever it wants to. It's not going to go where you want
That's
it to
right.
go.
Wherever the
Drift.
winds and the waves.
That's right.
Yeah.
But once you put the rudder on the boat or decide exactly what you want, then all of a sudden you can start planning to get there. I used to ask my real estate students early in their training, I would ask them, help me plan a trip. Can you do that? And they say, sure. And I say, okay, do. The first thing they said was, well, I have to know where you want to go. And I said, that's right. That's right. You have to know where you're going before you can make a plan to get there.
Yes.
So that's very important in life. So many people work for another company and they get up and they get ready and they go to work. They come home and man, they have something to drink, watch TV and go to bed and do the same thing the next morning. Well, that's
Yes.
okay if that makes them happy and that's what they want, but they could be doing so much more. I mean, and they're not really put here for that purpose. There is more that they need to be doing. Well, how do you find that out? What is your purpose? I've heard that so many times. Well, how do ants know what to do? How do bees know what to do? I mean, there's no bee school or bee college or ant college. They instinctively know what to do. Well, people have the instincts,
Yeah. Right.
but their butts get in the way. Let's say a young girl decides, I'd love to be a veterinarian, but I don't have the money. I can't go to school. It would be too hard. I don't have the contacts. I'm not, I don't know enough to become a veterinarian. If she had said, instead of but, if she had said, and I'm checking into the colleges, I'm reading every day about becoming a veterinarian, and I'm going and visiting with veterinarians, the next thing you know, she'll become a veterinarian.
Yeah.
So, and it doesn't really matter. I could have said anything. Like
Yes.
one of the stories in the books about Abraham Lincoln, early in his life, he described himself as a floating piece of driftwood. He had no idea what he wanted to do. He was just floating. Then he came into possession, he loved to read, he came into possession of some old English law books, a full set of them. And he read them and he just devoured them. He just loved them. So then he started going to court and watching court cases. And when he got into a courtroom, it had a different feel of smell, the way people talked, the things that were going on. He felt at home. He thought, I've got to do this.
Yeah.
So he determined, I'm going to become an attorney, and I'm going to do whatever it takes. Now think of this. Lincoln had no education, less than a first grade education. He could not speak English very well, very, very poor English, very poor English skills. He had no money. He was totally broke. Everything he owned could be fed into 2 saddlebags. And the horse that he put the saddlebags on was a borrowed horse. That's how broke he was. And that was sincerely.
So that's a start.
And he decided, well, I'm going to become an attorney. And he became one of the most celebrated attorneys in the state of Illinois, probably the second most important. And his business partner, was the most important. So that's what you can do once you set your mind to what you really want.
Fascinating. I was just thinking about the great state of Illinois. It's not that well known. What we do know is there's no noise in Illinois, as the saying goes.
That's
about
right.
Pronunciation, but we can't despise the day of small beginnings. And I'm loving this conversation, and I just want to do a shout out to our ladies and gentlemen in the audience. If you're listening to this and maybe you've gone through an experience where you had to borrow a horse to get somewhere, and everything you had could be summed up into 2 little saddlebags, and you had saddlebags and you didn't have a horse, but you knew you were going to get one. So put something in the comments of, what obstacles did you overcome? Or do you need some encouragement? Do you have that dry wood? You've been keeping your wood dry, looking for the person that's going to help you set a little fire. That that if you have the right circumstances, you can build that into a bonfire and impact your whole neighborhood with the light and the warmth of that. So write something for us in the comments about your experience. And if you need to grow, just put growth in there and we'll connect you with Dennis. Dennis, you've mentioned that reading daily, superpower that unleashes all other powers. Can you share maybe a specific example from your own life where a particular reading or maybe a paragraph or a sentence really transformed your thinking and action?
One of the first books that I got, one of the first motivational books, was The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino.
Yes.
In the back of that book, he has scrolls.
Yes.
One of the scrolls said, you're supposed to make habits out of these scrolls. One of the scrolls said, today I will form good habits and become their slave. And he explained in the book that people are creatures of habit. I don't know you and I don't know the people who are tuning in, but I can tell you this. When you first get up in the morning, you do the same thing you did yesterday morning and the day before and the day before and the day before. You get up and you either go brush your teeth or have some coffee or go to the restroom or whatever it is, it's the same thing because it's a habit. But what you don't understand is the next thing you do is also a habit, and the next and the next and the next. You're a creature of habit.
Yes.
Well, you have the free will. You can form whatever habit you want to form. And the reason this book was written was to help you form a really, really, really good habit. Now, that entire book was wonderful. I kind of patterned my book after it because the story in the first Part of the book makes you cry. It's cathartic. And I thought, wow, Agamemnon was powerful. No wonder this book sells so well. If you can make someone cry just by reading, that's pretty powerful. Well, my goal in writing this book was, in every short story, there's a climax. There's a place where things were bad, 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 and all of a sudden the sky opened up and everything changed after they fell down over and over and over again. And it's cathartic. It reaches in your soul and plucks your heartstrings.
Yeah.
And so when people come in and say, I read your book, I'll ask them, well, did you cry? 99% of them say yes. And I can tell you which stories will make them cry because even the hardest, my wife is really, she's Mexican, she's tough, And I gave her the book and said, help me proofread it. So the next day I came back and said, how's the proofreading coming? She said, well, I couldn't read anymore. I said, why? She said, I'm crying too much. I thought, well, it's working.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And, as I was mentioning to you when we first started that, near the end of last year, I was unceremoniously terminated. My position as a senior podcast producer was terminated. And that took a while for me to wrap my head around this place where I thought I was going to work for another 20 to 25 years and retire and have a good retirement and enjoy and be fulfilled. But I've got to tell you that shocking experience is probably one of the best experiences of my life because of what it affords me now to be able to do. And so we walk through life, and sometimes there's these pitfalls and little tripwires. And we realize that those things that come along change our perspective, and we can sweep the past up into a dustpan and put it in the garbage and just move forward. But Dennis, I'm very encouraged and just amped up with our conversation, and my reading list gets bigger and bigger. I wanted to talk about how you've distilled like decades of wisdom into what you call the 7 secrets of success. Could you share one or two of those secrets and maybe there are a couple that people overlook?
Well, I'll share all 7 of them.
Okay. Good.
It's an hour and a half presentation, but I'll just tell you what the secrets are. The
Sure.
first one is to get your mind right. You have to know what you want, have a definite purpose, have a burning desire, have faith that you can fulfill your purpose. That's the first one. You got to believe. The second one is you need to seek wisdom. I mean, every day you need to learn something more about your ultimate purpose. You need to look for mentors, read books, listen to podcasts, YouTube, watch TV, whatever, seek wisdom. Always be looking for how to do it and how to do it better. The third one is to develop skills. Michael, in every business or sport or any venture, there are skills that have to be mastered. And if you can't master them, you don't know what they are, you don't really have a chance. It'd be like a basketball player that couldn't dribble. They could shoot, they could pass, they could do defense, but it just couldn't master the dribble. Well, he couldn't play. I mean, you have to master the skills for whatever it is you're trying to do. The next one is to make detailed plans. You wouldn't dare try to build a building without having a blueprint. And if you didn't have a blueprint, you may finish the building and realize you didn't put the plumbing in at the time that you should have, and now you got to tear the building down to put the plumbing back in. So detailed plans are important. More important planning a life than planning a building. The next one is to take massive action. Massive action is different from action. Anybody, you have to take action to, eat and breathe and drink water. That's not massive action. That's just getting by. Massive action means you're going to do something that no one else is willing to do. In my real estate training, I would have my students go out and make so many offers a week. So they would come back in and I'd say, well, you were going to make 20 offers. How many did you make? They said, well, I made 5. Well, why didn't you make 20? Well, I didn't feel good, or it snowed, or this or that. They'd come up with all these excuses, and I'd kick them in the butt and say, no, the excuses don't work. You're going to go out and make 20 because that's what you told me you were going to do. Now, if the sun's shining and you feel good, you don't make 20 offers, you make 30, 40. Or 50, like squirrels. The squirrels gather nuts when they don't need them.
Yes,
They
that's right.
know that winter's coming. And if it's snowing and you feel bad and everything's going wrong, you still make 20.
Yeah.
That's just getting by. So that's the difference in massive action and just regular action like most people would do.
Right.
The next one is what we're doing right now. Form great alliances. Meet people who can help you and you can help them. Meet
Yeah.
partners, meet investors, meet bankers, meet other people that are doing what you want to do, meet people at church. Form alliances with people, just people who can encourage you, good friends that when you get down, you can call them and they'll lift you up. Alliances are extremely important, even if you're an introvert. I'm an introvert. But you still need to form great alliances regardless of that. And then the last is be persistent.
Yeah.
You're going
Yeah.
to get knocked down. You're going to have problems. Things are going to happen that you didn't expect. So plan for that. And your plan is this: no matter how many times I get knocked down, I'm going to get up and dust off my pants and head in the same direction.
Yes.
Now, when people have that kind of an attitude and they have that kind of a habit, you cannot stop them. And that's
right.
what this book is full of: stories of people people like Hershey, Disney, Schwarzenegger, Stallone. People, Mary Kay, these people, they have wonderful big names.
Yeah.
But it didn't start that way. They got knocked down over and over and over. Someone was interviewing the group Alabama. I don't know if you know of them, but it's a country group, the group Alabama, very, very famous group. And one of the interviewers said, well, what do you think about your overnight success? And Randy Owen looked at her and said, overnight success? What about the 18 years of going to bars where there wasn't anybody there but 2 or 3 drunks that had a fight and they were throwing bottles at us, and where people jeered and laughed, and it was tough. We had to travel all the time. We weren't making any money. What overnight success?
Yeah.
Well, when you hear of a famous person, you can pretty much figure that their success was really not overnight. It was over a lot of hurdles.
Yeah.
A lot of tough times.
Yes.
And so that should be expected, and that shouldn't bother you. You should just embrace it and learn from it and move forward.
Yeah. So how can our listeners get in touch with you for more of this daily impact and encouragement?
Go to realimpactbook.com. That's a website, realimpactbook.com. If they scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a place that says podcast attendee, and you can get the ebook, the Real Impact book, the entire book for free. There's no charge, no strings attached. I hope that you will read the introduction, how to use this book, and then think of 3 to 5 people, young people or business people or salespeople, and think this would really help them. And then think about, maybe I should get the next opportunity to give a gift, or just give them a gift, surprise them, because this book will change lives. I mean, it really will. And it's not because I wrote it, because I compiled it,
Yes.
The stories were good before I put them in there. The books are in the back were fantastic. I have one Amazon review said I gave you 5 stars just because of the list of the books in the back. And it is a powerful list. If you read those books, you'll be a different person when you lay them down. And if you go to the top of that, realimpactbook.com, right in the middle in the top, it says contact us. It has my phone number, has my email address. If you need a speaker at an event, someone for a podcast, a radio program, or just someone to give you encouragement, I'm available. If I'm not on a podcast or in a meeting
Wonderful.
or something, I'll talk with you or call you back. I didn't write the book to make $1 million. I wrote the book to help 1 million people. And it will. I sincerely believe it will.
Absolutely. So speaking of that reading list, then if readers are new, or if listeners are new to this, reading this type of book, would there be 3 titles on that list that you would say, start with these 3? And here's why.
Well, it's the 3 I've already mentioned. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Everybody that has any ambition in their life to do anything should read that book because it has
Yeah.
so many powerful principles in it. Success, the Glenn Bland method talks about balance. He talks about the 4 areas of balance. I don't remember how he phrased it, but when I read it, I thought, this is the same as the Bible because it says Jesus grew in wisdom, stature, and in favor with God and man. And that's your balance, your education, your health, your social, and your religious. That's your balance. If you can keep those things balanced, your life's going to be a lot happier and you'll be much more successful. And then the third book is The Greatest Salesman in the World. Read those scrolls and make them a part of your life. One of the stories in the book is about the author of that book, Mendino. And do you know that he came this close to committing suicide?
I did
close.
not.
He was
Wow.
living on the sidewalk in the snow. He was an alcoholic, totally consumed with alcoholism. And the book, it takes you through the story of how he came back. And now, he's not alive anymore, but his books are still selling 600,000 copies a month.
Wow.
So he became an extremely successful author. So
Yeah.
that means if you can come back from that, you can come back from anything.
Absolutely. So just before we wrap up, I want to ask you about, it's springtime. So the planting of seeds is on the mind, but we can actually plant seeds in our minds.
Exactly.
Could you walk us through that process of intentionally selecting which seeds to plant and then how we can nurture them?
Everything in nature is similar to everything else in nature. If you plant seeds in fertile ground and water them and take care of them, they will not produce another seed. They'll produce many, many, many times those seeds. And it's the same way with your mind. If you read the right things and listen to the right things, I like to think of it like this. Part of my daily affirmation is, today I will kill ants. I will kill ants. Now, ANT is an acronym for any negative thought sequence. If every time you think bad of someone, you think, no, that's an ant, I'm going to concentrate on something I'm grateful for, because you can't be grateful and negative at the same time. It's like trying to drive a car in 2 directions. It won't go in 2 directions. It'll only go in one direction. So any negative thought comes in your mind, you think, I don't know how I'm going to pay the rent. That's negative. Don't think that. That's going to come. Okay, if that happens, it happens. Worrying about it's not going to help. So think of the things that you have that you are grateful for. If you can breathe and walk and feel and drive, you can go find some way to get the money to pay the rent. So just be happy about that.
Yes.
So planting seeds is, if you forming good habits is planting seeds. And the greatest salesman in the world, has some wonderful, wonderful habits to start with, and then you can grow from that. Because part of the habits you'll form is, I'm going to form good habits and become their slave. If you say that every single day, you're always going to be looking for new and better good habits to form. And
That's right.
It's life-changing. Just that is life-changing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know how you cannot be happy now. I mean, if you know someone that's having a miserable day today, send this their way. Because just this last part alone of talking about planting seeds and killing the ants. Can you tell us what ants is for again?
Any negative thought sequence.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to remind you that Dennis has generously, I was trying to say generous and Dennis together because my brain was saying that sounds like a big word. Dennis has generously provided resources to help you and me on our journey. And of course, as Dennis has already said, you can access these valuable resources at realimpactbook.com. And there's other great resources on that website. Dennis, a hearty thank you for being with us and sharing your insights today.
Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate you having me. I hope you'll have me back someday.
Oh, 100%, yes. And it's just a great reminder that iron sharpens iron, and we're in this together, and we can just lift each other up. And I had a phone call today from someone that had a really bad weekend, and the bad weekend spilled, probably started Thursday and spilled into Monday. We've all been there. We've all been the cause of it or the recipient, one or the other. Just to be able to know I can reach out to so-and-so, and I'm either going to help them up or they're going to help me up. And so, Dennis, God bless you for your work, because you've changed a lot of lives, and I'm sure you're fulfilling not only your destiny, but other destinies.
Well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And viewers, thank you too for being here. We appreciate you joining in and listening in on this conversation. And if you haven't already, I'm going to say it again, please, help us grow this channel with a like, a share, and a subscribe. Definitely share this out, because this is going to help some people around you just have a better day. And so, friends, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all your support, your 5-star reviews, your virtual cups of coffee at buymeacoffee.com. We just thank you and appreciate that you're part of this 5 a.m. community. And we hope that you seize your day today, and that you get up and you see the value and the enjoyment of those sunrises and sunsets. I'm Michael Klassen. Thanks for being here.